Quick question. If I told you that the way most Americans over 55 pay for vacations is quietly draining hundreds of thousands of dollars from their retirement, would you still book that next trip the same way? Stay with me for the next few minutes, because once you see the math, you will never look at travel ads the same way again.
It's Saturday night, the grandkids just went home, you're on the couch scrolling, and there it is, a perfect Caribbean cruise ad that seems to know your name. Blue water, smiling couples with gray hair, the words "you deserve this" splashed across the screen, and a friendly option underneath, pay over time, as low as $99 a month. If you're like most Americans over 50, travel isn't just a luxury anymore, it's a priority. Older adults now plan close to 4 trips a year and expect to spend about $6,800 annually on travel alone. And across all age groups, Americans are on track to spend more than $220 billion on summer vacations in a single year, with the average household dropping about $2,843 just on summer trips. In a few minutes, I'll show you how just one of those trips, if you put it on plastic, can silently turn into a $50,000 decision for your future self.
This video is not about never traveling again. In fact, some of the research on vacation and health is actually very positive. Time off can reduce stress and improve mood, especially for older adults. The trap is how we pay for those trips and what those decisions do to the last 20 or 30 years of your life. AARP's latest travel trends show that people 50 and older are traveling more than ever, taking almost 4 trips a year, even as cost remains one of the biggest concerns they report. At the same time, survey from Bankrate and others show that around a third of Americans who plan summer travel say they'll go into debt to do it, using credit cards, buy now, pay later, or even personal loans. So if you're over 55 and still building or living off your retirement savings, here's the uncomfortable truth. The dream vacation industry and the debt industry are working together on your wallet.
Let's talk about how these trips get paid for in real life, especially if you're in your late 50s, 60s, or already retired. One major survey found that more than a third of people planning a summer vacation expect to take on debt just to make the trip happen, often by carrying credit card balances or using buy now, pay later plans. In another Bankrate holiday travel survey, about 31% of holiday travelers expected to end up in debt between credit cards and buy now, pay later services. And in similar travel surveys, many travelers say they'll tap savings or investments when their cash runs short, which for some people effectively means raiding money that should be growing for retirement. NerdWallet's research on household debt shows that revolving credit card balances, the kind you carry month to month, have been creeping higher, and many Americans say they expect their card debt to increase, not shrink. For older adults, that is especially dangerous because you have fewer working years left to fix a bad decision, and more years in retirement where interest can quietly eat away at a fixed income. In just a moment, I'll walk you through a real-life example of a couple in their 60s, where one recurring cruise is the difference between retiring at 67 and having to work until 72.
Meet Tom and Linda, not their real names, but a very real situation I've seen again and again. They're 63 and 61, married, with grown kids and a handful of grandkids. They've worked hard, saved what they could, and together they earn about $90,000 a year before retirement. They're on track for what many advisors call a borderline retirement. Not broke, but not exactly overflowing, especially with rising costs and healthcare to think about. Every year, they take one big trip, usually a cruise or an all-inclusive resort, that ends up costing around $7,000 once you add up flights, lodging, fees, and all the little extras. That's slightly above what many 50-plus households say they plan to spend on travel each year. Now here's the catch. They don't usually have $7,000 just sitting in a travel fund. So almost every year, they put half or more of that trip on a credit card, then chip away at it over the next 8 to 12 months. With typical card interest rates well over 20% for many Americans, those trips don't really cost $7,000. By the time they're paid off, they may have quietly cost $8,000 or more. Here's where the trap tightens. If Tom and Linda had invested that $7,000 each year instead of spending it in a simple diversified stock index fund earning around 8 to 10% a year, roughly in line with long-term U.S. stock market averages, after 20 years they could be looking at well over $300,000. That's not a fancy spreadsheet. That's basic compound growth, the same long-term return range financial companies and market historians talk about when they look at decades of S&P 500 performance. In other words, for Tom and Linda, the once-a-year big vacation isn't just $7,000 now. Over time, it's the difference between a lean retirement and a comfortable one. Imagine being 75 on a fixed income, looking at a portfolio that's $300,000 smaller, and realizing it went to trips you barely remember clearly. Now, you might be thinking, Robert, money isn't everything. Travel is about memories, not math. And you're right, up to a point. There is solid psychology research showing that experiences often make us happier than buying more stuff, especially when they're relaxing and shared with people we love. But here's the part the travel industry leaves out. A big meta-analysis of vacation studies found that the boost in health and well-being from a typical vacation is real, but it's modest, and it fades pretty quickly once you're back home. One influential study titled Vacationers Happier, but Most Not Happier After a Holiday found that vacationers were happier mainly before the trip, during the anticipation phase, and that after the trip, their happiness levels mostly returned to normal within a few days to a few weeks. More recent research confirms the same pattern. Vacations improve mood and reduce stress, but those benefits fade within the first week or so back at work, unless the trip was very restful and your daily life is reasonably manageable. So here's the key question for someone in their 60s. If the happiness boost fades in a few weeks, but the credit card bill hangs around for months or years, who's really getting the better end of that deal? And remember, studies also show that more expensive trips do not reliably produce more happiness than modest ones. What matters most is rest, relationships, and how truly unplugged you are, not five-star prices or fancy brand names.
Okay, enough doom and gloom. Let's get practical. I want to give you a simple framework you can run every trip through in under a minute. I call it the Retirement Vacation Rule, 6-90-10. Step 1, the 6% rule. Cap your total annual travel spending, everything, including flights, hotels, food, and fees, at around 6% of your gross household income while you're still working. If your household income is $80,000, that means roughly $4,800 a year as your all-in travel budget, which is right in the same ballpark as what many households say they actually set aside, but now it's under a clear, rational ceiling. For those already retired, you can adapt this by using 6% of your expected annual withdrawals instead of income. The idea is the same. Your future freedom should set the boundary, not the travel ad. Step 2, the 90-day rule. If you can't pay off the entire trip within 90 days in cash you already have, not counting future bonuses or tax refunds, it's too expensive for your current situation. This lines up with Bankrate's warnings about travelers who plan to carry card balances over multiple billing cycles. Once you're dragging those balances out, you're in the danger zone. If a buy now, pay later button is glowing on the screen and that's the only way the trip feels affordable, that is your sign to scale back, not your sign to click accept. Step 3, the 10x future you check. Before you book, take the total cost of the trip and multiply it by 10. That's a rough estimate of what that money could grow to over a 25 to 30-year period if it were invested instead at around 7% after inflation. So a $5,000 trip doesn't just cost $5,000. Long term, it's closer to a $50,000 decision for the older version of you who will need every bit of security they can get. Now, sometimes that answer will still be yes. A once-in-a-lifetime trip with your kids, a final big family reunion while everyone is healthy, that can absolutely be worth it. But at least you're saying yes with both eyes open. Right after this, I'll give you specific ways to keep the joy of travel while cutting the financial damage by half or more.
Let's make this practical for the real world. You don't have to become a hermit to retire comfortably. Strategy 1. Downsize the distance, not the joy. AARP's research shows that older adults often travel within the U.S. to places like Florida, California, Las Vegas, Texas, and Arizona. You don't need a passport stamp to make meaningful memories. Choosing a national park, a cabin in the mountains, or a road trip to see family can cost a fraction of an international resort, especially once you strip away airfare and international fees. Strategy 2. Travel when everyone else isn't. Travel reports show big price differences between peak seasons and shoulder seasons. Going a few weeks earlier or later can shave 10 to 20% off your lodging and airfare without changing the destination. Strategy 3. Let your kitchen do the heavy lifting. Food is one of the most controllable travel costs. Booking a place with a basic kitchen and doing simple breakfasts and some dinners yourself can cut hundreds of dollars off even a short trip. Strategy 4. Never ever spend to earn points. Surveys show Americans spend thousands of dollars each year chasing card rewards, and many people either carry balances or never redeem a big chunk of those points at all. Used wisely, points and miles can reduce your travel cost, but if you're buying extra just to hit a bonus, those points are serving the bank's retirement, not yours. Strategy 5. Set a visible annual travel budget. Older adults report anticipating around $6,800 in yearly travel spend on average, but very few keep a simple visual tracker of how much they've actually used. Put a number on the fridge or in your budgeting app, Vacation 2026, $4,000 max, and watch it as the year goes on. If a trip will blow through the limit, don't cancel travel, adjust the trip. Because at this stage of life, peace of mind is worth more than another Instagram-worthy sunset.
If you're over 55 and you've ever put a vacation on a card, dipped into savings, or said yes to a trip you knew was too much, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not bad with money.
You are up against billions of dollars of marketing that has spent the last 15 years telling you that saying no to an expensive trip is denying yourself a life worth living. We see constant messages like you only live once, collect memories, not things, and carefully staged photos of luxury travel. And the research shows a huge percentage of people now choose destinations and even stretch their budgets based on what they see online. For older Americans, there's another layer, a fear of running out of time, not just money. You've worked for decades, your body has its own opinions now, and it's easy to feel like every trip is now or never. But the real trap is the idea that you only have two choices. A, finance big glossy trips you can't really afford, or B, stay home and never go anywhere. That's a false choice. The data on happiness says you get most of the benefit from rest, relationships, and novelty, not from price tags, 5-star labels, or flying halfway around the world. Your grandchildren are not going to remember what brand of resort you stayed at. They're going to remember that you were there, that you weren't stressed about money, and that you were able to keep showing up year after year.
So here's the bottom line. Vacations themselves are not the enemy. The vacation trap is when trips are paid for with debt or with money your 70 or 80-year-old self is going to desperately need. Use the 6-90-10 rule. Cap travel at a small slice of your income, pay every trip off within 90 days, and multiply the cost by 10 before you hit book. If it still feels worth it, fantastic. Go and enjoy it fully, guilt-free. And if you realize the math doesn't work this year, that's not deprivation. That's you buying something much more valuable, extra years of freedom where you control your time instead of a bill collector. If this opened your eyes at all, do two things. First, share this video with someone you know over 55 who loves to travel. Second, tell me in the comments, what's the most you've ever spent on a vacation? And would you still book it if you multiplied the price by 10 for your future self? I'm Robert, and on this channel, we help you enjoy life today without sacrificing your freedom tomorrow. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.